So I think I'll just start. Good evening, everyone. I am Varusha, and I'll be hosting today's session along with Anisha. And without any delay, I'll quickly get into the event. Before we formally start with our speakers, I'd like to talk about how this year's election has sort of, renewed our faith in India's democracy and our journey towards progress, harmony, and inclusivity. And as the new parliament takes its oath, I think it's very crucial for us as citizens and future leaders to address shortcomings and voice our expectations that will lead to India's economic and social equity. And today we are here to do exactly that. On behalf of Sarkari School, a public policy initiative that aims at establishing a pro-government school narrative in India, I'd like to welcome all of our talented speakers and dynamic leaders to discuss the gaps in India's education system and how they believe the new parliament can address them. Before we start, I'd also like to inform our audience that after each of our speaker is finished with their speech, the floor will be open for questions. So audience members are encouraged to ask questions and discuss relevant topics with our speakers. With that, I'd like to call upon our first speaker for the evening, Bhakti Gupta. Bhakti is a grade 12 student from Bangalore. She's currently studying physics, chemistry, and math. She's the founder of Iktara, an NGO that aims to tackle period poverty, offer comprehensive menstrual education, and enhance menstrual hygiene amongst the marginalized communities in India. Bhakti has also been an active member of nonprofits and NGOs like Ladki Padhao and the Iksha Foundation. Bhakti, thank you so much for joining us today, and we're thrilled to hear your insights on how menstrual health challenges women's education and how they can be addressed. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Varusha, for the lovely introduction. Good evening, everyone. Today I'm here to talk about a very controversial topic in the field of education, but if changed, can completely redefine how we look at our education system. Our curriculum is designed on traditions that have been passed down through generations and generations of strong beliefs and taboos. Sex education and period education has been denounced by the conservative societies when our curriculum was first constructed, and it has been passed down the same way through our parents and our grandparents. However, isn't school supposed to be a place where you can learn everything unbiased? Is a school supposed to be the place that is shielded away from the conditioning of society? However, this is not the case. A lot of private schools and government schools lack the necessary knowledge about reproductive and sexual health. In this generation, where we can get information through one click, technical knowledge isn't power anymore. It doesn't place you above 90% of the people as it would have in the 1800s or the 1900s before the age of the internet. And that's what schools have failed to consider. Times have evolved, but schools haven't. Now, with so much misinformation on the internet, especially about sensitive topics, it becomes critical for schools to provide concise, comprehensive, and correct knowledge, especially about periods and sex education, because teenagers have one unparalleled quality: inquisitiveness. So if schools don't tell them, they will have a tendency to inquire. And sometimes the information that they may get could be wrong. Moreover, having wrong or no information on these two topics affects women disproportionately. If safe sex is not seen to, it's the women that gets an unintended pregnancy. If period education is not imparted, it's the women whose mental health deteriorates. And not knowing is a very scary phenomenon, especially for something like periods. Imagine being under the influence of overstimulated hormones, not knowing what is happening with your body, and bleeding from your vagina all at the same time. So while I worked on ground through Ektara, during one of our menstrual awareness sessions, a government school girl told us about her story of her first period. And it was quite interesting. It reflected a lot on how much we lack in this sphere in our education system. When she first got her periods, she was petrified. She was so petrified that she thought that she had cancer. She mistook periods for having cancer. And not only that, she was petrified to such a huge extent that she actually took a piece of paper and she wrote a letter to her parents saying, Mom, Dad, I'm going to die soon. I have cancer. I love you very much. Remember me. If this is the scenario that girls have to go through when they're on their periods, we are failing as an education system. While working on ground, what I have noticed is that although they are aware of periods, they aren't aware of how to take care of themselves during those vulnerable times. And even if they are aware of periods, they're also aware of how society regards them as disgusting and impure. This poses a very big inhibition on girls who at that age care so much about what other people think. 23 million girls drop out of school every year because of periods. Over a span of 10 years, that's 230 million girls who drop out of school. Periods aren't seen as empowering, they're seen as a sign of weakness. And the more that the girls hear about this perspective on periods, especially from their teachers and their peers, the more that they start believing it. And the more that they start seeing themselves as weak and disadvantaged. And they start undermining themselves. Moreover, men and women are intertwined. They are intertwined through millions and millions of years of biological processes. Just because it's a women problem doesn't mean it's a women's problem. It's a male's problem too. So why aren't men kept aware of periods? Why are we so carefully separated into two groups while we women are taught about periods? Not only that, but coming to the domain of sex education, one woman in India is raped every 6 minutes. That means that by the time you finish your lunch, 2 women have been raped somewhere in the country. That's how bad it is. So why does it happen? Most of the rapists are educated men. It's not like they lack education. But you teach them about physics, chemistry, math. You don't teach them about respecting sexual boundaries. So can we blame them, or can we blame the education system which has failed to teach them about consent? Education is the most significant platform that everyone has common access to. If we can change the education system, we can change the country. Consent can be respected, periods can be normalized, gender inequality stemming from both of these can go down. The education system has the power to construct society or to annihilate it. So here are my proposed solutions for the new parliament. At the core of it, teachers need to be trained. Not in a way that this is what periods are, this is what sex is, and this is what you have to teach the children, but in a way that you destigmatize it for them too. Because most of our teachers come from a conventional background with an orthodox mindset. And this poses a very big inhibition on them. Because they can't teach something they don't believe needs to be taught. So the new parliament needs to spend time training faculty to have a more open mindset before they go on and teach students about it. Secondly, consent education needs to be a core part of sex education. I recently came across an article which entailed the 5 components of consent. Consent just isn't getting a yes from your partner or the opposite gender or anyone. Consent has 5 components, and the acronym is FRIES. It should be freely given, it should be reversible, it should be informed, it should be enthusiastic, and it should be specific. Why do I have to learn all this through articles on the internet? Schools need to be teaching this. And lastly, for periods especially, instead of surface level knowledge, comprehensive knowledge on cramps, mood swings, menstrual products, menstrual hygiene, menstrual waste disposal, and how to mentally deal with so many hormones working at the same time needs to be taught. And not just theoretical knowledge, practical tips need to be given. What yoga poses can I do to relieve my cramps? What homemade tea can I make to relieve my cramps? If I'm going through so many hormonal changes, what can I do to keep myself grounded? And if required, such topics can also be tested through an exam at the end of the year for both men and women. I cannot emphasize this enough. Both men and women need to be taught about periods. Because when they grow up and they get married, or they have a mother, right? They need to learn how to take care of their female counterparts. They need to learn how to be understanding of them. To conclude, from the new parliament, we expect a liberal mindset, a mindset that has the empowerment of stigmatized topics at its core. Because it's time for our generation to break the cycle that has been going on for generations and generations and generations. The perpetual cycle of not knowing about sex and about periods. Because change takes time and it's not linear, but it's definitely worth a try. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhakti. Despite menstruation being so natural, it still poses a setback for women in schools and in their professional careers. And you've articulated that really well.
Thank you.
We're now like to open the floor for questions. You can either raise your hand or type your questions in the chat box, and Bhakti can address them. Okay, okay, we do have a question in the chat box.
Do you think it will be easier to introduce sex education in Indian schools when we don't even acknowledge sex unless it is in context of violence? In terms, if you're asking me if it's going to be easy, it's definitely not, because this is a very deeply etched belief in the mindsets of our current leaders that sex does not need to be taught, right? So it's not going to be easy. But the thing is, right now, the positive side of it is that the new generation that's coming up has this liberal mindset, has this belief that sex needs to be taught. So I think as new leaders emerge, right, and as a lot of people from our generation actually start voicing out how it needs to be a part of our curriculum, I think it's definitely possible. So to answer your question in one sentence, no, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy, but it's definitely possible.
Thank you, Manya. Oh, we have another question.
Under the news of some country distributing free condoms in school, people criticized it, saying it will promote sex. Do you agree? Okay, so I actually just read a statistic today. Yeah, got it. Which said that educating, um, teenagers about sex actually is statistically proved to reduce the amount of unprotected sex, right? So the fact that they're giving condoms may be a little bit more controversial, and it does not need to be implemented as of now, right? As of now, I think just educating them about sex is enough, right? Because yeah, giving out condoms can maybe motivate them to do it, but that it doesn't need to go to that extent. We're not saying India needs to go to the extent where they're freely distributing condoms in school, right? I'm just saying it needs to be a normalized topic that people can talk about, and it should be a topic that is freely taught in schools. I shouldn't be encouraged to have sex at this age, but I should definitely be taught that safe sex is better if I do decide to have sex, right? Or how I need to respect consent if I do decide to have sex. So to answer your question again, no. Distributing condoms is maybe a little bit too extreme, which does not need to be done as of now, right? But yeah, sex education definitely needs to be approved. Okay, so that's one more question. How exactly do you suggest we implement sex education in our current school curriculum? How young do you think we should start this teaching? Which communities do you think we should target first? Okay, so I'll answer the second part of the question first. When should you start teaching about sex education? According to me, I think 10th to 12th is a good age, right? Because your brain has physically developed, right? So it can assimilate sex, what it is as a concept, what it is in theory, in practical, way better than when you are in 9th, 10th, 8th, right? So I think 10 to 12 will be a good time to introduce this into the curriculum. Which communities do you think we should target first? Okay, let me give this a thought. Okay, so in terms of the extent of stigmatization, right? I feel like private schools, right, or people from a little middle class or upper class, they have a little bit less stigma related to sex than underprivileged communities, right? So in terms of how it will be received, I think it's better to kind of circulate it in the middle and upper class schools first, just because I think they'll rebel a little bit less, right? And then eventually, depending on that, we can learn from our mistakes, right? Depending on the way we implemented it there. And then we can rectify those mistakes. And then I think we can go and implement it in underprivileged communities. And last part of the question, how exactly do you think we implement sex education in our current? Okay, so I think most schools have like a chapter on reproductive system, right? So instead of just giving theory of this is your vagina, this is your penis, this is your uterus, it does this, I think it can be very seamlessly inculcated in that chapter itself. It's just that it's not inculcated in that chapter because of the stigma. Okay, one more question. Oh, what? Yeah,
Yeah, because we have a time
yeah,
constraint at the moment, I think we'll restrict ourselves to 3 questions. But
no worries.
Bhakti, you can maybe type in the answer to Sanjana's question so we can all
Sure,
take a look at it.
will do. Thank you.
Um, Thank you, Bhakti. With that, we'll now move on to the next speaker on the list. The next speaker is Samyak Jain. Samyak is an economics major at Delhi Technical University and has previously served as the Director of Professional Development Services at USME's Rotaract Club. For the upcoming academic year, he will be serving as the District Director for Rotaract Focus Area. We are excited to hear your opinions and thoughts on the deep links between education and mental health, Samya. Please take over.
Hi, hello everyone. I hope I'm audible as well as visible. Okay, so the theme I've chosen is education and mental health. Right. So I think most people think that these two things go hand in hand. If mental health, if mental health is not okay, then there's no point in education, right? There's no point in education being effective or no matter how tech oriented or advanced it is. Association of higher education with better mental health has been established for a long time, but I negate it. I feel with India becoming a factory or a mere business platform for the dealers of education, trying to sell ranks and competitions with the bait of a higher salary package, I think in turn it is a turmoil on the mental health of students. A question for those who give a green signal to such myths of greater education, leading to better mental health. Why is this that why with more educational platforms, more students enrolled in coachings and institutions than ever in the history of education? Why has the suicide rates also increased to its highest since 1967? Reports say that the suicide rate among students have increased by a whopping 70% since the last decade. Yeah, obviously Mr. COVID happened in 2020, which led to digital learning, but also less interaction, all work, no play. But I feel more students died by suicide in 2020 than farmers. Yet, while farmers' suicide is more prevalent, is widely recognized as a crisis in India, but student suicide is increasingly swept under the rug. According to National Crime Records Bureau, in 2020, a student took their own life every 42 minutes. That is, every day more than 34 students died by suicide. Although it's not education that's, you know, gonna promote good or better mental health, I feel knowledge can. Like, knowledge is a necessary foundation for making purposeful, health promoting decisions. Now, why I'm saying is, uh, there's the aspect of depression that is an aftermath, right? And it's a very major one, a major aftermath that's eating up the youth. I I think that majority people know, if we talk about this month, we know this is a Pride month, right? But with taboo and conservative mindset already surrounding the society, you would be surprised or shocked to know that the IPC, Indian Penal Code, is being transformed into BNS, that is Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhit. And from tomorrow, very ironic by the way, from tomorrow, 1st July, there's no such law that criminalizes sexual violence against men and animals, because there's no section 377 in BNS, right? So, although there were MPs that opposed this in Lok Sabha, and the new parliamentary committee suggested inclusion of legal remedies equivalent to section 377, but their feedback was merely ignored. So, with that, I think although a lot of things that we expect and we want from new, parliament, but the very first thing I want to establish is that let's hope that the parliament is heard at least. The parliament is bad, good, we expect from parliament, that is the secondary thing. Primary is that the parliament is heard, right? The voices of youth are heard, what we say is actually implemented and taken into consideration. I'm in no position to say about Ministry of Education, and I don't claim to support or be against any particular party or person. But with high expectation from the new tenure and the members of ministry, I just wish to add that there should be more people who are young among the youth, and I think like the youth, right? They should be the ones who realize what we go through and like feel the issue at the grassroots level. Matlab, simply a 50-year-old taking, policies and forming policies that he thinks will help the youth and, reform the education system is okay. Even if he's representative, it's okay. But it's okay when there's a team of people who are, under him and are actually doing the groundwork, who are forming policies for him, and they feel the youth. I don't want him to be taking the decisions, right? And it was really inspiring and appreciable when, one could see that the candidates of age 25, 26, 27 being part of parliament this time and, taking oath. So, we can expect better from the government, the parliament this time. And okay, let's, deviate a bit. I'm a big cinephile, right? I love movies and shows. And I recently watched, if you've seen the last season of Kota Factory, okay? I'm a big cinephile. So I'm gonna talk about that for a while. Okay. Spoilers ahead, but there's this teacher called Jitu Bhaiya. People know him, right? So they don't call him sir, they call him Bhaiya because he wants there should be no boundaries, and students to be frank with him. That's a great idea. I don't think it really happens in India at that level, but okay, it's a great idea. He understands the mentality of youth, his students mentality, how they are merely 16, 17-year olds, and their mental health takes a toll due to all the stress, the family pressure, adolescence, stuff like that. He's really against the system of ranks, coaching centers, how they are just becoming businesses and focus on bright students and neglect the other ones. And they all want ranks to be focused on. And but he, the Jitu Bhaiya, actually treats all students equal. He says that it is the weaker ones we need to focus more on rather than the rankers. So over the years, he's moved at a point when one of his student, a girl, commits a suicide. Right, he's really worried, and that's when he gets into depression and other things. So that's when he openly says about the loopholes of education system, how certain things can be improved. Further, he is offered a position at Ministry of Education. Now the thing here is the mentality, the ideology. I really like the philosophy that how he rejects the offer, because he says he's just a teacher. So a teacher cannot be part of ministry. He says that I'm not the one who's gonna make policies. I'm not the right person to do that. But he later realizes and is convinced that he's the person who actually knows the issues, right? And if we think, we'll feel that too, that our teachers know about us better than any policy maker, right? So he realizes that he can actually make a greater impact in society and for students of country. So yeah, that's that. But I really like the ideology, the philosophy. Waiting for the next season, that's another case. But coming back, the recent event in India, the recent change in the education policy, the NEP 2020. NEP 2020 is simply great. At least I believe it's a change. The policymakers are thinking for a change. Now that is a celebration we need to, do. As we are yet to see the impact of NEP 2020, but the initiative is what is appreciable. Inclusivity in subjects one can choose, or less boards pressure, 4-year honors program. I really like the idea that there's a change. I do not know how successful it will be, but the fact that people are changing and realizing that the policies are actually very ancient and it should be discarded now is great. Okay, so talking about the expectation of youth, for them, I think what's youth? Youth expects to be free, right? Like for me or today's Gen Z or not millennium, but yeah, Gen Z, they want to be free. They want to be who they are, right? They know they are not idle. Okay, they know, like they want to stay awake at late at night. They want to be who they are. So I feel that these things should not be ignored, but actually accepted when the policies are made. The policymakers or the ministers, they need to accept that okay, this is today's generation. They are like that, and so we need to make our policies such that they go hand in hand. For today's generation, I think acceptance is the key. Time to change the ancient curriculum as well as the mentality people have. Those things are not going to work today. And okay, so talking about today, I don't know if many of you know, but today is social media day. And social media day, like, so why do we celebrate it? Because it's a big thing, right? In today's world, social media is such a big thing that we are even celebrating a day for it. So I want that to be accepted as well. Ki there's a routine students have. They are gonna study, they are gonna work hard, but they also spend time on social media. How that can be incorporated in policies. So there are many aspects that need to be. I think when the students are Gen Z, the parliament needs to think like Gen Z. That being said, I think new parliament policies just need to accept and understand the youth and surround the policies, keeping in mind this factor. I want to conclude by saying that so I read this beautiful thought on the very website of your page of Sarkari school.in, that if your actions inspire others to dream more, to learn more, do more, and become more, you're a gem for humanity. I fell in love when I read this because this actually coincides with the metaphor for today, that for canvas of education, the canvas of education can basically be turned into a masterpiece through our strokes, through the brush strokes of youth, right? So I think it is us that hold the chains now. And yeah, so I think it starts with us than pointing out to others.
Thank you so much, Samyak. We'll now swiftly move on to questions.
Sure.
We will stick to 2 questions because of the time constraint. So yes. We have a question in the chat box.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so how social media can be incorporated, right? See, by that I mean ki when you see policies, okay, I don't want policies to be displayed or I think conveyed as policies. They can be very, they can be conveyed very playfully. For example, if the government sets some rule, okay, and if they convey it through social media, people will know it better than releasing on their website. That has to be done, releasing on their website and the document stuff. But when you actually convey it through social media and the platform where the youth will understand it through collaborations with influencers and the content creators. Yeah, Priyanka is saying something, I guess. Okay. So yeah, I feel social media can be incorporated by government collaborating with influencers, content creators, spreading awareness. That way, if the students see that their role model, their favorite influencer, is promoting such thing, they'll understand it better than merely reading the documents government publishes. Yeah. I think there was another question.
Samyak, maybe you can answer them in the chat box itself.
Sure.
There are 2 more questions by Urja and
Manya.
I think by Jyotri.
Yeah, by Manya and Jyotri, it seems.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'll
So
answer the chat box.
yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next speaker on the list is Mahi Tripathi. Mahi's academic interests lie in the intersection of economics and international relations. As a feminist, her advocacy has reached great heights, including the United Nations. Her numerous accolades in model UNs and debates speak volumes about her eloquence and intelligence. Thank you for joining us, Mahi, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on the massive gender disparities in the field of education. Please take over.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Varusha. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. So it's great to be over here with you people today. I'm actually very inspired by Bhakti's speech since I myself started a non-profit organization in 2021. We had to shut it down due to some reasons, but it was related to menstrual poverty, and we ended up collecting around 10,000 rupees for the masses, and it was a great initiative. So yes, about the UN, I would just like to give you people a brief background about myself. So I've been interning with this organization, which is associated with the United Nations. So we have girl advocates from all over the world, and we connect with each other mostly online since we cannot we don't have the means to visit the New York office yet. But yes, so it has been great, and my speech today incorporates everything that I've learned so far, connecting with everybody from all around the world. So let me just start and with a quote by Malala Yousafzai. I've actually read her book and it totally inspired me. So this is a quote by her. The content of a book holds the power of education, and it is with this power that we can shape our future and change lives. These words resonate deeply as we explore the transformative potential of educating girls and promoting gender equality. So now talking about promoting gender equality, we need to talk about investing in girls' education because I feel like that's one of the most transformative changes that you people can experience. So investing in girls' education is not only a moral imperative, but also a strategic decision with far-reaching benefits for communities, nations, and the world at large. Girls who receive an education are more likely to delay marriage, lead healthier lives, and contribute economically to their families as well as the societies. They are empowered to make informed choices, participate in decision-making processes, and break cycles of poverty. Studies consistently demonstrate that educated girls become agents of change, positively impacting family health, income levels, and community development. For every additional
I think there's an internet issue at Mahi's end. So let's quickly move on to the next speaker. I think I'd like to call Olivia to take over. Olivia is Mahi,
Yeah.
sorry.
Is it fine now? Yeah. I'm so sorry. There was a power cut. It's actually in my area. So now it's better, I guess. Yeah.
Sorry,
So we were talking
Olivia.
about how, yeah. So we were talking about how girls consistently, who are educated, consistently demonstrate that educated girls become agents of change. Like all of us over here, you can see we are all changers here, right? We're trying to formulate, come together, discuss things, and basically bring about a change in the society. So for every additional year of schooling a girl receives, her future earning significantly increases. Moreover, educated mothers, if you've seen, they tend to prioritize a children's education, perpetuating a cycle of learning as well as development across generations. Now let's talk about some challenges that exist, because living in India, there's definitely nothing that goes without challenges or barriers. So despite the progress that we have made so far, significantly barriers persist in achieving gender equality in education, cultural norms, societal expectations, as well as discriminatory practices that continue to limit a girl's access to education in many parts of the world. Let me talk about this very great statistics that I heard about a girl from the sub-Saharan African region. I interacted with her during one of my events, and she ended up sharing that girls particularly face challenges there, including child marriage, gender-based violence, and inadequate infrastructure, which is the case in Indian societies as well. So, cultural beliefs that prioritize boys' education over girls, because of course, girls are definitely going to leave the household one day, and boys will always stick, as people say. So we have disparities, geographic, including lack of transportation, unsafe school environments, as well as gender bias in the curriculum and teaching practices. This also reminds me how the LGBTQIA plus community is not just it's not at all represented in our curriculums. People don't even know about it because sex education is, of course, a taboo in India. I come from an all-girls convent, and trust me when I say, talking about discriminatory practices, it's so weird how girls' schools were, created to educate women, and then they only end up teaching how girls are supposed to be a burden on their families and how we should interact with boys, because basically we are sluts if we do that, right? So yeah, that's the problem with the current education system. Now talking about the initiatives and innovations. So effective interventions are, crucial to overcoming these challenges and creating inclusive, equitable education systems. Initiatives as the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao campaign in India exemplify efforts to address gender disparities in education and ensure the safety and education of the girl child. Now, let's not forget that even though we have numerous education systems, like, these campaigns and initiatives coming up, the main thing missing here is the accountability factor, which we need to take into account. When we talk about a new parliament coming up, they will always promise you a lot of things. They will come up with a lot of initiatives. They will start a lot of campaigns. But what's the end result? We don't know, right? Because there is no accountability. We don't get the real reports. We don't get the real statistics. So that is the most prevalent problem, I would say, that is present. Integrating gender-sensitive curriculum and teaching training programs helps dismantle stereotypes and create supportive learning environments. Now, talking about teacher learning, my mother is a government school teacher, and she recently has this training program going on that I'm so sorry, that's my dog. So yeah, talking about gender stereotypes, my mother is a government school teacher, and she has been, receiving this training recently that is, meant to educate her on how to remove gender stereotypes. But what's missing here is the groundwork, because my mother and her teachers might take this teaching to a next level and they might incorporate it in the curriculum, so to say. But most of the teachers don't, because they don't go to the schools, right? They have the money, they bribe their officials, whatever, who are keeping the checks. And, I'll just get my dog out of my room. Give me 1 minute. Yes, I'm back. So yes, now let's talk about the impact of this on the societies and the economies. So the ripple effects of girls' education extend beyond individual empowerment to societal and economic transformation. Educated women often contribute to higher household incomes, improve community health, and greater social stability. They are more likely to engage in civil activities, advocate for gender-sensitive policies, and drive sustainable development goals. Again, just like all of us sitting here, we're educated, we know our rights, and we can fight for them. But most of the people who don't have access to this cannot. Now, gender equitable education systems contribute to reduce rate of child marriage, gender-based violence, and discriminatory practices. By investing in girls' education, societies invest in their future prosperity as educated women become catalysts for innovation, entrepreneurship, and equitable growth. Talking about government leadership and how crucial it is to this issue, it is pivotal in advancing gender equality in education through policy formulation and implementation. We all know that. There are a few initiatives that bring about a positive. The Mahila Shakti Kendra scheme in India, which empowered rural women through skill development and employment opportunities, reinforcing the link between education and economic empowerment. Such initiatives definitely exemplify a commitment to creating enabling environments where girls can thrive academically and professionally. Also, legislative measures to ensure compulsory education and combat gender-based discrimination in schools are critical steps towards achieving universal access to quality education for all children, regardless of the gender or the background. By investing in education and infrastructure, teacher training, and inclusive curriculum frameworks, governments can foster environments where the child has the opportunity to fulfill their potentials. Now, talking about the current challenges and the future directions, which is, I guess, the most important part of my speech, talking about how to, combat this issue. So, despite progress, significant challenges remain in ensuring equal access to education for girls and boys worldwide. Socioeconomic disparities, cultural norms, and humanitarian crises continue to pose barriers to girls' enrollment and retention in schools, particularly in conflict-affected regions and marginalized communities. Now, to address these challenges, stakeholders must prioritize gender-responsive policies and investments that promote educational equity. This includes expanding access to safe and inclusive learning environments, providing targeted support for girls from vulnerable backgrounds, and engaging communities in dialogue on the benefits of girls' education. Now, these dialogues can be conversation circles that you organize in schools, in person, in online, hybrid, or however you want to. But just talking about these issues that you're facing gives you an upper hand, because when you are aware of these issues on the ground level, you can definitely go ahead and, if represented in the parliament someday, if women get the chance to be represented at the parliament, you will have a voice which can talk about your issues, right? Now, talking about the success issues and the lessons that we have learned, several success stories underscore the transformative impact of gender-responsive education policies. In Rwanda, for example, government-led initiatives to promote girls' education have resulted in significant gains in enrollment and retention rates. Similarly, Bangladesh's investment in stipends for girls' education and community-based interventions has contributed to higher school attendance among girls. Wow, great. These initiatives highlight the importance of multi-sectoral collaborations and community engagement in overcoming barriers to girls' education and empowering young women to pursue their aspirations. To conclude, achieving gender equality in education is not just a moral imperative, but a pathway to sustainable development and global prosperity. Now, let us draw inspiration from the courage of advocates like Malala Yousafzai and ourselves and commit to building inclusive, equitable societies where every child has the opportunity to learn, grow, and succeed. Together, we can harness the power of education to create a future where gender equality is not only a dream, but a reality. And as Malala famously said, one child, one teacher, one book, and one pen can change the world. So let us be the agents of change who ensure that every child, regardless of gender or circumstance, has the tools and the potential and the opportunities to shape a brighter tomorrow with education. So thank you so much for inviting, and I'm really glad how you people have picked up your speakers today from various backgrounds. We get to hear so many diverse perspectives. And also, if you pick up people who are already not involved, like I would say in the mainstream career line, you get to learn about the younger voices and what they are demanding. So that's great. Congratulations on that. I'll be open to questions now.
Yeah, I think we'll be opening to questions. And again, just to reiterate, we'll stick to only 2 questions. Maybe make them a bit more concise, so they're easy to read through.
Somebody says they love dog's passion on gender disparities. Thank you. I'm turning them into a like me.
I think Vrinda has a question. If you can quickly look through it.
Yeah, I don't see it in the chat. Can someone read it out to me? Like, oh yes, I can see it. Yeah, I'll read it. Program was implemented. Aim to provide businesses. Okay, you mentioned businesses and teaching despite some challenges and even across states, lack of trained teachers. How do you think programs Yeah, so like I mentioned, accountability, that's the main reason, not coming up with elaborate programs, with elaborate schemes, which, just give you a theoretical approach, right? Like we always talk about education, right? Whenever you have a theoretical subject, you don't learn much about it. But when you apply it, that's when you are able to actually understand the intricacies of it. So when you're talking about a program, it's very important to start at the ground level. And the ground level work will not begin with theoretical, elaborate manifestos that they come up with, that we're going to do this, we're going to do that. That's not how it works. So a scheme is definitely only effective when you have accountability. So when you start a speech at a certain pace at the ground level, and then you keep taking accountability from there, that's when it begins. Talking about government schools, the government books, they are written by individuals, right? Like they are meant to be taught to students. So how about we include something related to gender stereotypes in the curriculum itself? How about we test that instead of testing everything else that they are testing right now? Like, they're trying to teach English to students. They don't even know how to converse in English. They haven't had that background from people at home or whatever. They don't have that knowledge. Why are you focusing on a language so much? Why don't focus on these things? So I would say that's, I hope I've answered your question, Vrinda. If you have a follow-up, then you can send it. That's it, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty
Okay.
much it. Thank you so much,
Thanks.
Mahi.
Thank you. All the best to all.
Our next speaker, I think I've already introduced her a bit, but is Olivia. Olivia is an upcoming cognitive science major at Dartmouth. She has led numerous initiatives to bridge socioeconomic divides in India, namely her acclaimed project, Wakalat AI. This legal advisory chatbot aims at providing legal information to all individuals, irrespective of their social backgrounds. Olivia, thank you so much for joining us today. Please take us through global education trends and opportunities and how they can align better with India's education goals. Over to you.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. My name is Olivia. I'll start now. With globalization being on the rise in today's date, international education has been on the forefront of Indian students' aspirations, whether it be acclaimed Ivy League universities such as Harvard, Yale, and Stanford, or the Russell Group in the UK, including universities like Oxford and Cambridge. All this time, Indian students have been witnessing the rise in global educational trends. These research universities offer one of the best opportunities worldwide for research, networking, vocational training, and independent experience going abroad to a multicultural setting. Gaining admissions in these universities seem to be a lifelong dream come true for many people. With acceptance rates falling below 10%, the competition is higher than ever before. These universities accept the best and brightest from all over the world. However, for Indian students, the competitiveness is not the only challenge they face in their journey of applying abroad. They also face massive issues with the cost of attending these universities, with fees ranging from around 1 crore INR to 4 crore INR for just a 4-year degree. This incredible opportunity remains just a dream for many low-income and middle-income students here in India. I too was one of these students. However, I had the great opportunity to attend a boarding school in Jaipur, Rajasthan that specializes in US college admissions. After 2 years of hard work and sacrifice, I learned to build my resume, do the extracurricular activities, bump up my academics, and eventually I managed to gain a near full scholarship to Dartmouth College, which is an Ivy League college. I will be attending this fall. And I'm incredibly grateful for this opportunity that I've received. But I know that there's so many others just like me on the same path as me who, despite being incredibly talented and so smart, they were unable to get these scholarships and their dreams have been rendered unfulfilled. So my talk centers around the global educational trends and opportunities and how our newly formed parliament can make changes to improve the success rate of Indian students going abroad. Firstly, more Indian students need to be aware of these educational opportunities abroad. Running nationwide awareness campaigns, hosting school outreach programs, posting online resources on the official government portal can intensify students to apply abroad. Secondly, there should be more accessibility and connectivity between Indian students and these universities abroad. The government can encourage collaborations between Indian universities and foreign universities. This could involve maybe joint degree programs, student exchange programs, and allowing credit transfer between these universities. One great example is the Cornell University's Cornell Tata Scholarship, where every year Indian students, 4 Indian students get a full ride scholarship to Ivy League's Cornell University. Thirdly, and most importantly, making education abroad financially accessible to Indian students of all incomes will encourage excellence in academics and career-oriented activities. The government can offer more scholarships specifically for these students. These scholarships could be merit-based or need-based to ensure that talented students from India from all backgrounds have a chance at studying at these top universities abroad. At the current moment, unfortunately, many scholarships exist, but only for PhD and postdoctoral, like higher education degrees. However, many scholarships for undergraduate and masters are very, very limited. They're usually given a cap to maybe under 10 lakhs per year, which is barely enough for these Indian students to fulfill their cost abroad. And while others are restricted by state, for example, there's one scholarship called the Rajiv Gandhi Scholarship for Academic Excellence. However, it's only for Rajasthanis living in those states. Additionally, I would like to talk about loan programs that the government can subsidize with lower interest rates to significantly erase the financial burden for students and their families. Another great way to ensure that the scholarship that we give our students is repaid in some way. It's a great scheme by the Singaporean government, and I think our Indian government can also take a great example from this. So the Singaporean government, they give a scholarship to international students on a bond mechanism where students receiving this financial aid promise to work in the country for 1 to 3 years on a contract, and they benefit the Singaporean community and economy as a repayment for their educational finances. A similar mechanism can also be employed by the Indian government to make sure that all of our talent that is going abroad and getting educated comes back to India, serves our country, and then, that's the way we can boost our economy wholly. Last but not the least, the government can definitely provide services for free counseling services for students applying abroad to make sure that applications are successful and the best of the best Indian students can go abroad and make our country proud. I hope, like me, other students are able to go abroad and fulfill their dreams of studying abroad. This will not only ensure that Indian talent is nurtured at the best universities abroad, but also make sure that Indian students like me, and even Urja is one of the speakers today. She's also from my school. I didn't know she was here. And she's also going to U Chicago with a near full scholarship. So these type of scholarships allow students like me and Urja to actually, make sure that we Indians excel all across the world in every single field and contribute to the world's well-being, economy, and community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Olivia, and congratulations to you and Urja for your admissions.
Thank you.
With that, we'll swiftly move on to questions. Again, to reiterate, we'll stick to 2 questions.
Thank you so much, Mahi.
Seems like there are no questions. Yeah. So I think, thank you so much, Olivia. We'll move on to the next speaker. With that, before we move on to the next speaker, I'd like my fellow host, Anisha, to take over for the rest of the session.
Thank you, Varusha. I hope I'm audible and visible. So before we move ahead, just a gentle reminder for every speaker to limit the speech to 5 to 7 minutes. Because we have a number of speakers to cover yet, but no worries, you can take your time as well. So moving on, we have our next speaker. He's Abhay Majhi, a postgraduate student in English literature from University of Delhi. He has been instrumental in Adivasi student leadership programs in the university and has been a very sharp voice for Adivasi rights in literature and in media as well. His passion in setting defined political narratives for Adivasis as well as rural India keeps him very busy. So we are very happy to have you here, Abhay. You can just start with your speech now.
Hello everyone. I hope I'm audible. I'm sorry about my video settings because my camera is not working today, unfortunately. But thank you everyone for this wonderful opportunity. So my theme, which I'll be talking today, is inclusive education for all. So first of all, let me talk a bit about the inclusive education and what is it all about. Inclusive education is an approach to education that emphasizes access to education under one roof for the traditionally excluded groups, especially children with or without disabilities, and those who speak in their minority languages, etc. Simply put, inclusive education can greatly reduce discrimination against children with disabilities, promote equality, access, and right to education and care. for that, it is essential for that schools try to include such learning methods in the curriculum. In a country like India, the problems of disabled people and minorities are very complex. People's attitudes towards them are also very bad. The number of children with disabilities, we can call them CWDs for now, enrolled in schools in our country is decreasing significantly in each successive schooling. So children with disabilities rarely progresses beyond primary school, and only merely 9% of them end up in secondary education. There are even fewer girls with disabilities than boys in schools. The reason for all of this is the lack of inclusive schools in our country. At present, due to the lack of inclusive schools, children with special needs have no other options rather than attending the National Institute of Open School Learning, which is not bad in itself, but it is still not at par with the better colleges and universities that other people with no disabilities or people not coming from the minority statuses have to go through. Also, the children with special needs depend on the special schools or child development centers. So, according to the Indian Disability Status 2003, the number of schools for children with special needs has been increasing over the years. We have different commissions that have actually helped education to be inclusive in India. Some of those are the Kothari Commission and the 1974 Government of India Act. And apart from that, the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and the RMSC schemes. But among these, I think the most recent one which have caught our attention is the National Education Policy 2020, which mainly revolves around the theme of and the concept of inclusion and equity. The NAP 2020, although envisages a equitable and inclusive education for all, not only children, youth, but also girls, but it really has a really long way to go, because the framework with its wide policy gaps in the education of children with disabilities is nowhere near to anything that we have actually thought of. So the government of India has recently the government of India has made it a priority to implement inclusive education. There have been legislations, programs, etc., to successfully implement this, but there is still a huge gap between the policies and the implementations. There are several obstacles that stand in the way of effective implementation of inclusive education policies in India. Given the nature, diversity, structure, quality of life, literacy rate, and poverty index of Indian population, the implementation of inclusive education in India is bound by very strong chains. So we are faced by the main barriers we are facing is the lack of positive attitudes among teachers, non-inclusive curriculum, lack of resources, infrastructural problems, unawareness among parents, improper execution of policies, and irregular plans. So some these are all the major barriers, but there are also some ways to overcome these barriers. Some of them, I would say, that we have to detect early and help the children understand the problems and their special needs and provide them with appropriate help. We can also have standard tests practices that can help us find out more about the disability or the minority status that they have been facing. We can also have special training programs for teachers and schools, and maybe even have a special educator at place in every school. Or we can also even focus on the completion of or other education of vocational training, and that can actually help them gain employment with every schooling year. Apart from that, we also need services in the support systems and so that the government agencies and the private partnerships can also chime in to help. So all of these kinds of programs will help in fostering the efforts to build a more inclusive education system. For successful implementation of an inclusive education system in India, parents, teachers, and even the children without disabilities have to be educated about the system and made aware of its benefits. These people play a pivotal role in the implementation and process as they interact with the children with disabilities on a regular basis and form a from their immediate surroundings. Uh, Children with disabilities also have access to inclusive and quality education on an equal footing with others in the communities in which they live. So this is what I had to say. So I am ready for the questions now. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Abhay, for that speech. If there are any questions from anyone, you can put it on the chat box. I would like to ask a question like that, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I feel like regarding inclusivity of education, a lot of stigma is there still in society, right? Like that is part of
Yeah.
the problem because of the mentality of people. So how do you think there's a way around it? Like how can you change that?
So I did say it in a part of my speech that we actually have to start with actually educating the parents, the teachers, and also the children who are not suffering from any disability or not from the minority communities or the people who are not from the minority language speaking communities. It's important that we actually educate them and actually hire special educators in schools or in universities, and maybe even make the spaces more inclusive for all of them. For disability students, maybe people who use wheelchairs, we can actually have ramps and better payments for them in university spaces and everywhere. So if university spaces are not very inclusive, then we cannot expect them to be a part of the education system ourselves. So the first point is that we should actually start thinking of education uh, not only in the sense of books and chapters, but also in the areas that they inhabit. So once they are comfortable in our shoes and everything, in everybody's shoes, I think that then we can then we can formally enter into the changing of curriculum and everything, so that they can be a part of the education system and also be a part of the employment scenario here.
Thank you, Abhay. Now, if there are no questions, I'll just move on to the next speaker. I would like to now call upon Urja Vohra, an incoming freshman at the University of Chicago, planning to study neuroscience and behavior, founder of Project Prakriti, which repurposes school food waste into biogas, and mentoring over 200 students through Ideate Club. Founder of the Jayashree Perival International School Psychology Association, a prolific writer, published 2 anthologies, and contributed to the science newsletter Quantum We are more than delighted to have you here with us, Urja, and we are very excited to hear your thoughts on rural and urban education disparities, especially focusing on training and incorporation of technology. Over to you, Urja. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are often told that to grab someone's attention, start with a story. Therefore, here's a little story about a young girl from Bhilwara, a small city in Rajasthan. When she transitioned to one of the leading schools in Jaipur, she faced daunting questions. JPIS is an extremely competitive school. How are you going to start from scratch? You're going to fail miserably and fall flat on your face. On the 3rd of April 2022, as she stepped onto the campus of JPIS, her mind was a storm of apprehensions, overwhelmed by the fear of change. The hostel buzzed with energy, but she was consumed by a knot in her stomach. Today, that young girl stands as an incoming freshman at the University of Chicago with a full scholarship, and that little girl was me. Exposure to an urban education system was crucial for achieving this milestone. I'm just one person. There are tens of thousands out there who have the potential, but not the opportunity for this change. The difference between urban and rural students lies not in the intellect, but in the environment, infrastructure, and access to facilities. Therefore, I want to talk to you about bridging this gap. At the heart of our education system lie the teachers. Yet rural schools are plagued by a shortage of qualified teachers. We need to make sure that teacher recruitment in schools is competitive. Offering lucrative packages is essential to attract qualified candidates to school teaching. Look at Singapore, where high salaries, excellent working conditions, and supportive policies make teaching a coveted profession. This is why Singapore consistently ranks at the top in international education assessments. In India, I feel like we must adopt a similar approach. Good teachers lead to good students in a smart, developed nation. But recruitment is just one part of the equation. Teacher training needs to be strengthened. For example, some visionary teachers in rural areas teach beyond their levels and create an everlasting impact on the students. Central and local governments or administrations can organize subject-wise peer training programs led by these exemplary educators. Rather than sending teachers to urban centers for training, they should bring training programs to rural institutions, enhancing quality while reducing costs. Well, the internet, when harnessed effectively, can democratize education. Increasing internet accessibility in rural areas is not just an option, it's a necessity. The BharatNet initiative aims to connect every village in India with high-speed broadband, but we must accelerate these efforts. Imagine a future where a student in a remote village has the same access to world-class education resources as their urban counterpart. This isn't just a dream, it's an achievable reality. Conceptually, three models of e-learning can connect knowledge seekers with knowledge providers over the internet. First being asynchronous learning. Platforms like OER Commons, Udemy, and Khan Academy allow students to access educational resources anytime and anywhere. While it doesn't provide immediate responses to queries, it supplements traditional teaching methods. Second being synchronous learning. This model connects students and instructors live and online at predetermined timings using video conferencing tools. Queries and doubts are addressed immediately. And the third one being a mix of both of them, which is called the blended learning method. Combining synchronous and interactions and asynchronous access to pre-stored materials, this model actually leverages both live teaching and pre-recorded resources. So here, the government can utilize common service centers or rural learning centers and transform local infrastructure into nexus of quality education. Moreover, a new standardized curriculum should be introduced by the government nationwide, which should aim at fostering curiosity, critical thinking, and a growth mindset among the students. However, I do know that rapid changes in the curriculum disproportionately affect rural students, whose education base is already very weak. We must ensure that any changes introduced do not negatively impact any group. And so for that, annual evaluations, evidence-based research by third parties can help overcome the shortcomings of the curriculum and ensure that it serves all students effectively. Education is a powerful tool that can transform lives and communities, fostering a sense of peace and security. As urbanization continues to shape our world, the need to bridge the urban-rural gap becomes more pressing. So today, let us renew our commitment to promoting an inclusive educational landscape that leaves no one behind. India's young population is our greatest asset. If we ensure that this benefit is available to all and not just small, highly educated elite, we can compete with other nations. With almost 60% of the population living in rural areas and 35% of them being under 15, we must invest in human resource development. You know, somebody once told me that true terror is to wake up one morning and discover that your high school class is running the country. To make sure that when our high school batches reach the age where they are running the country, maybe potential ideas for avoiding rape in the country are not termed as boys and girls should be married by the time they turn 16 so that they do not stray, or the provision of electricity in the village is used as a method to curb the population. Well, this is not supposed to be a political jibe at anybody here. All I'm saying is that the current parliament should make sure that the future leaders of our country are well educated, well informed, and well prepared to lead us into a brighter, more equitable future. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Urja. That was truly, truly very insightful, and it was a pleasure hearing. If anybody has any questions, they can put it up on the chat box. So Urja Varusha is asking, how can we ensure that asynchronous resources is available to communities that unfortunately lack resources to access the same on their own?
Well, I did. Thank you, Varusha. I do appreciate the question. Before starting with those sort of resources, I talked about internet accessibility. And today, more than 70% of the rural population do have access to phones and internet. And I feel like under the BharatNet campaign that has been started by the country's government, it can be extended to the overall rural population.
Urja, if you don't mind, I have a question. Like when we talk about rural education, I think a lot more times, more than like technology or like access, it's the money that plays a more important role, right? Like these are big, big families for whom like earning an income is more important than getting educated a number of times. So
I'm
like,
sorry,
how
I
do you
lost you after big, big families. I'm so
yeah,
sorry to
so
cut
like,
you.
yeah,
I lost you
can you
after
hear
big,
me? Am
big
I audible
families.
now?
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
audible now, please.
Yeah, so like, so to take care of these big families, earning becomes a priority than actually getting educated. So like in that situation, how do you like put the priority of technological education in those areas?
Well, I do feel like before the technological part, we do need to imbibe the importance of awareness of education in these rural areas, right? So when that starts there, it's often told that um, when a woman in the family is educated, it changes the entire forecoming of the family, right? So I feel like when that awareness comes out there, the perspective will change from earning for the family to actually getting educated to make sure that the upcoming generations have the utmost availability of resources. And I do understand that at times it's not an ideal situation for everybody, but now even the government can provide subsidies for that matter um, to bridge that gap, I feel somewhere. Like it can provide funding on that. There is a part of free education also that China had incorporated and is now a major success in that country. They have monumentally increased the amount of availability of education in the rural areas. So considering our populations do match in numbers, I feel like somewhere we can incorporate the same model to bridge that.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Urja. Now we are moving on to our next speaker. Now I would like to invite Sakshi Nagarsekar. She's currently a master's student of international relations and strategic studies at University of Mumbai. She's passionate about studying and developing deeper into various cultures across the globe and upholding her own in a global setting. She's an environmentalist, caring for animals around her, and basically tries to find ways to including providing voices for the voiceless in the field of education through her publications and so on. So Sakshi, you can take over now.
Am I audible?
Yeah, audible and visible.
Thank you so much, Anisha, for this lovely intro. Good evening, everyone present here today, and thank you so much for having me here at this insightful event. My name is Sakshi Nagarsekar, and today I shall be talking about the youth and the expectations of the youth from the new parliament in relation to climate change, environment policies, and animal welfare. Along with the need to inculcate not just a basic level, but a little higher level of environmental education within the education system of the country, so that the new generation realizes the urgent need to act upon saving and restoring the environment. So, right from school, our education system includes environment studies and comprises of various topics ranging from pollution, negative impacts on biodiversity, impacts of the same on human health, and various other such topics. However, the drastic change in the climate that can be seen from the various incidents that have been occurring in our own country in the various parts of India only emphasize the need to take stronger and strict measures to enforce environment policies and laws that inculcate sustainability within our daily lives. So, as we know, major cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata continue to face severe air pollution, especially during the winter months. Despite efforts to curb the emissions, air quality indices frequently it reaches hazardous levels, and over extraction of groundwater has led to critical shortages in various parts of India, including Punjab, Haryana, and Rajasthan. This also affected agriculture and drinking water supplies. India has experienced record-breaking heat waves, as we have seen in the news, with temperatures soaring above 45 degrees Celsius in various regions. This has led to health emergencies and increased demand for electricity. So, extreme weather events have also included cyclones and floodings and have become more frequent and intense in states like Odisha, West Bengal, and Maharashtra. And so basically, what I'm trying to say is all of these events are a result of the environmental impacts that need to be investigated thoroughly in order to come up with effective environment policies so as to tackle such environment situations. Okay, while environment education is a must within the education system of the country, the concentration should be on teaching in a more immersive way by using practical skills for sustainable living. So, concepts such as responsible consumption and production, urban sustainability, energy conservation should be inculcated within the education system. Children should be encouraged to think out of the box when coming up with methods and innovations, emphasizing on the urgent need to conserve the already deteriorated climate and environment. Okay. So when we talk about the environment, a crucial aspect which is often overlooked is the welfare of biodiversity and animals particularly. So right from grazing to raising animals for consumption, this has shown a huge impact on the environment. So this is where consumption shifting plays a key role in order to counter the harmful effects of the same. So now coming to the expectations of the youth. So as youth, what are some of the expectations that we can have from the parliament in terms of environment conservation and climate change policies? Firstly, young people should expect stricter enforcement of the existing laws on air, water, and soil pollution. They want to see significant penalties for the industries and individuals who violate these environment norms, and improved systems for waste segregation, recycling, and disposal are always a priority. Secondly, there is a strong call for greater investment in renewable energy and energy sources such as solar, wind, and hydroelectric power. So, young Indians, we should expect the government to facilitate research, development, and deployment of cleaner energy technologies and policies that provide financial incentives for the adoption of renewable energy by both individual and business levels. Yeah. And we should also adhere to and actively participate in the international climate young people would expect to adhere to and actively participate in international climate agreements, the most famous one being the Paris Agreement, which we all know about. So as youth, we want the government to set ambitious targets for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and also work towards it, and not just have discussions based on the same. Integrating environment education in schools, extracurriculum, promoting awareness campaigns to inform the citizens, making them aware through community services, through by having environment communities, and various such other examples can be taken, and they are essential in order to provide platforms for the youth to engage in policy making and environmental advocacy. And the government should support youth-led initiatives and movements. Along with this, there is development of green and sustainable urban infrastructure, including efficient public transport, green spaces, eco-friendly buildings. They are always a priority. And encouraging and supporting startups that focus on environment technology and sustainable solutions through grants, incubators, and mentorship programs. Lastly, open access to environmental data and performance of various environmental programs is crucial because the youth expect regular updates and transparency in the government actions. So establishing clear accountability mechanisms for environment policies and actions, and ensuring the goals and targets are met And if not, then corrective measures are taken. So with that, with the expectations being put for the youth to make a to make a conscious choice, I would like to end my speech here. Thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you, Sakshi. That was truly very insightful for us to hear. If there are any questions, you guys can put it up on the chat box. I'll start with one question, Sakshi. My only thing is, you talked about immersive experience, right? Like how in schools curriculum, like basically immersive experience should be introduced rather than just like writing on the textbook and teaching it to the kids. So like, how do you think like these immersive experiences can actually be implicated in schools? And you're on mute, Sakshi. And I think we can take Manya's question as well. It's very similar. She's mentioning the inclusion of environmental studies in the undergraduate curriculum of colleges. While it is a positive step, its implementation appears ineffective as students often treat it as just another subject to memorize for exams, right? What strategies do you suggest to genuinely increase youth engagement and concern about climate change? Clearly, simply adding a course isn't enough.
Okay. So when it comes to being actually participating as a student, so I would like to give a personal experience that I'm currently doing. So there's this app, it's called Earth 5R. So I recently came across it, and it's basically an environment community wherein it's like the environmental version of Instagram, basically. So there's this community of people who they have different programs going on individual levels or group levels or whatever. So they have various initiatives towards the environment, and they kind of post it there. So either they post it there to encourage others to do it or to encourage others to kind of join them. And there are also various activities that the app initiates, which you can participate in as a student. So I feel this such communities, especially creating an app for such, because students are mostly I mean, we all are into technology, right? We all prefer doing it online and everything. But such awareness, even if it's spread online, can have a significant impact. So I feel such apps, such communities play a key role and can be inculcated in considering the new generation and how they like to take initiatives. So yeah.
Like the consciousness comes as part of an individual, right? All right. Thank you, Sakshi. Thank you for this speech. It was great to have you. Now moving on, I would like to call upon our next speaker, Adya Singh. She's a rising third-year psychology major at Ashoka University and social media director at Sai Shipu, head of the teaching vertical at NEEV, the Community Engagement Club of Ashoka, focusing on impacting primary, elementary, and secondary education along with social and emotional learning (SEL) to the kid and the youth of Asavarpur village. We really appreciate your presence here with us, and we cannot wait to hear your views on the rural and urban educational divide with a special look on the availability of the resources that are actually provided to the people there. Adya, you can take it.
Thank you, Anisha. Good evening, everyone. As mentioned in my introduction, I've been part of this club called NEEV, which is the Social Community Engagement Club at Ashoka. And I've been interacting with this village called Asavarpur, which is near Sonipat, Haryana. And for the past 2 years, I think I've been engaging with kids from the ages of 5 to 20. My bit today is, I think Bhakti said it during her speech, from that it's important and rather imperative for us to go from not knowing to knowing. So instead of giving policy suggestions per se, I have more of on-ground reality checks because I've been engaging with the community for the past 2 years, and also some food for thought. My theme is also very related to what Urja was talking about. Again, the urban and rural disparity in terms of education. And also because all of us today here are talking about policy and change and leaders and everything related to that, I'd also like to put in a thought that while we're on this forum and discussing our thoughts, I think in a democratic country like ours, it's really important to make the people who were having these decisions and conversations for part of the conversation. Because if we're making a decision for someone and if we're making a policy for someone, it's really no point in sort of making a policy for them without including them, because that will be more or less imposing our thoughts without knowing the ground reality. To give you the ground reality checks, first of all, there is a vast disparity in the enrollment age in the rural sector. So, to give you an example, we usually start in urban areas. Speaking from experience, we usually start school at the age of 4.5, right? There, that's not really been the case. And school there might start from 6 or 7. And also, due to a lack of awareness and illiteracy, more or less, parents there are not really aware of where to start from. Like, there's not really such a well-defined system as it is in urban areas of, okay, there's nursery and kindergarten, then there's first, second, third, elementary, primary, and then secondary, senior school, and then senior secondary school. In my experience, what I've also come across is, say there'll be a kid in 6th grade, and you'd be expecting kids from 6th grade to read sentences and learn paragraphs and know their whatever they're learning in school, but usually they don't even know alphabets. So the main disparity here is that kids are being enrolled into grades which is not in alignment with what they know and not their age, because again, they're either not being enrolled on time, or they're being enrolled into, again, grades that do not match, which is again something that the reason here is also because of something that we've discussed before, is how in rural areas still the current reality is that livelihood is again preferred and a chosen means of their everyday life over education. They would much rather engage their kids into whatever their parents are doing to, again, earn the source of income and livelihood, rather than invest in education or send them to school, because of the sheer lack of knowledge of why education is important. So even though we can say that there are so many schemes like midday meal schemes and everything that all our speakers have mentioned before, the sad reality is that even though there are these so-called incentives and policies made by the government, they're not really working enough to sort of send them to school and also study there. They might just be going to school to eat, because again, that can also be something that they're lacking. So they're going school for food and not to study. So opportunity and all the means are lacking. Other thing that I've noticed is there's a huge disparity between private schools and government schools. Even in rural areas, students who are going to private schools know much more than students who are going to government schools. Students who are going to government schools again have teachers who are not showing up, or who are not enthusiastic about again what they're teaching, versus in private schools, whoever's going, they're very again up to the mark, know what they're doing. Accessibility, again, something that I think Mahi was talking about, is a very major issue. Language is still a major issue, even though we have NEP, which is sort of promoting all our native languages. That is not again something that has been executed at the forefront of the local areas. The textbooks are still in English. They don't know the ABCs, so there's no point in having a storybook or any textbook in English. When we teach them, they often demand that the content that we're teaching to be in Hindi. And again, if even not Hindi and English, there are so many students who again are, say, immigrants from other areas and know their native languages, but there is a very vast lack of educational resources in native languages. Another thing about gender ratio that we've talked about, Gender ratio, from my experience, what I've seen, if you say take kids from the age of, say, not the age, let's say the grades, first to third grade, you will see that there's an equal ratio between male students and female students. As you go up higher the grade scale, the ratio of female students decline. In fact, from first to third grade, you'll see more female, like uh, kids, girls, more girls than boys. In like middle school, you will see a sort of equal ratio of boys and girls. But as you go up the higher school levels, you will see a sheer lack of female students. And if you go and ask them, their mentality is still that there's no point in us getting educated, because, well, we have to run the house and who's going to look after this and that, which is why there is a very, very big disparity there. Also, something to note about urban, because we've talked enough about rural, we might think that due to technology or say other means and accessibility, urban situation would be near about perfect. Well, that's not the case, because my mom's a teacher and I've been in and out around her, like looking after the kids she teaches at home, like any like tuition kids that come over. And the effects that both my mom and I have seen, and after the pandemic, is that again, when these kids were supposed to have their foundational years, when they were sort of going from, okay, we know the ABCs, but the world is way more than the ABCs. So how do we bridge the gap? Like join the letters, make a word, make meaning, make sentences, and then again, okay, what is the full sentence and what does that mean? That foundational bridge years that were supposed to be spent offline, in person in schools, were spent online owing to the pandemic, which is why there was a huge gap. So right now, even if you look at kids from the age of say 5 to 6, or even to the kids who are in the age of 8, 9, and who are in the grades 4, 5, 6, they don't they don't know how to read, they don't know how to write, which is a big shock if you think about it, that kids in urban areas who are in the grades 6, 7 are not able to read and write and understand the meaning of whatever they're studying, which is a big reality check and something to think about. So yeah, that's my bit. Wanted to give all of us a reality check of where we're lacking and food for thought for all the future policymakers.
Thank you, Adya. I think like the personal experiences that you shared about your mom and actually seeing the kids, it provides like a lot of empirical evidence to what you said. So, like, it was very great to hear you speak. If there are any questions, you guys can put it up on the chat box or they can take them. Adya, okay. So Varusha is asking, as a student at Ashoka, I have had the honor to closely follow Neve's work, and it is truly inspiring. On a more lighter note, every week we see these tiny and extremely naughty, might I add, kids running around campus, sitting in classes and learning, and it truly brings everyone a lot of joy. Thank you for so much, everything you do, and Neve does. So, okay. All right, then. Moving on, we have the last speaker for today's session. I would like to invite Neinomching Haokip to take on the stage now. She has showcased her leadership skills by leading the ICC committee at St. Stephen's College, Delhi. She spearheaded a number of projects, leading and collaborating with students. She's passionate about delving into disparities faced by students through educational institutions. We would love to hear your views, Norm, about exploring the social disparities in education. So yeah, take it away.
Hi, thank you so much for the introduction, Anisha. Hi, everyone. So my topic is kind of similar to what Adya has said. So I am just gonna say, because whatever I wanted to convey, how the message is already conveyed by her. So I'm just gonna talk about how we can move forward, and how the differences is already being talked about. So we Indians, we pride ourselves that as a nation which values knowledge and education. But the harsh reality is that our rural areas are lagging far behind our urban centers, and especially when it comes to quality education. So the disparity is not only a matter of inequality, but it is also a threat to our nation's progress and prosperity. So this disparity is not only unfair, but it's also a, somewhat in a way, ticking time bomb for a nation's progress. So we cannot afford to leave behind a significant portion of our population, denying them of the opportunity to reach their full potential. So the consequences are far-reaching, especially when we talk about it has a lot of skilled workers, a lack of skilled workers, decreased economic productivity, and increased social and economic inequalities. So furthermore, the rural-urban divides also perpetuates the existing social and economic hierarchies. So it makes it difficult. So within the divide, we also have a sub-divide, which makes it difficult for marginalized communities to break the cycle of poverty and discrimination. And let's face it, even within the marginalized communities, we have like only 0.01% of the population coming out and actually representing their own people. So which it itself talks about how important the rural-urban divide is. So what can we do? Some stuff that which has been talked about for years and years, but we still need to talk about it because we have a lot still to work on, is to invest in rural infrastructure, train and deploy more teachers. We do need a lot of teachers, but even the existing number of teachers we have, they need to be trained to match up with the current generation. So we need to leverage technology to bridge the gap. We need to implement innovative solutions like digital classrooms, online resources, and community-based learnings. So in order to build digital classrooms, online resources, what do we need to do? We need to bridge the digital gap. So we must also address the root causes of this disparity, like poverty, lack of access to healthcare, and social discrimination. And we need to work towards creating a more equitable society where every child has access to quality education, regardless of their background, location, or socioeconomic status. So we all are claimed, or we all are student leaders in our own way. We want to bring a change about, even this little butterfly effect. The little change we do will make a change in the country. So we have to work together to create a more inclusive and equitable education system where every child, regardless of their zip code, has access to quality education and the opportunity to shape India's future. So in order to do that, let us recognize the potential of our rural youth and empower them to become leaders, innovators, and change makers of tomorrow. Because, when you visit the ground reality and when you go to rural areas and you see these kids, the amount of the lack of self-esteem and the lack of confidence they have, which they have so much potential, for everyone has potential, but the lack of such issues, when we see them, I think, it's really sad to see the ground reality, and especially when in a violence hit areas where they deserve so much more, but because they're forced to be displaced.
Just wait for a minute to see if she gets it done.
Think what happened?
You got disconnected. We heard to the part where we're talking about how the kids in the violent street areas are like more vulnerable.
Okay.
Till that part.
So, so they're more vulnerable because because it's just one or two teachers, no principal, just one or two teachers in the village coming together and just trying to teach them A, B, C, D, the alphabets and whatever they know. How far are these kids gonna reach when education is supposed to be their basic right? So yeah, I think what we can do is hope and give and fund as much as we can privately. Government, if there's any government schemes, we can encourage them to do it. So yeah, I think that's all I can add from my part. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. It was really, really, really nice to hear you. If anybody has any questions, they can put it about the chat box right now. So Norm, Vrinda is asking, she has a question regarding the rural-urban divide, and Adya, you can take it up as well. Apart from the lack of access to resources, this divide also encompasses various forms of discrimination. While such discrimination exists both in urban and rural areas, it manifests differently in each context. How do you think we can address the rural-urban divide alongside the various forms of socioeconomic discrimination as well?
Yeah, I think what we can do at an individual level is provide awareness, as much as awareness we can do, because that's very important. No, we need to speak up, because urban, when we grow up in urban areas, when we have the privilege of education, people don't know it's a privilege. That's why people tend to forget about it. So I think we need to talk as much as we can about it, and that's a start. That's where we can start. Yeah.
The acceptance of privilege itself is such a big thing to do.
Yeah,
that people don't realize. That is very true. Adya, do you want to answer the question as well? Yes, Adya. Okay, I think she left. All right then, this brings us to the conclusion of our discussion regarding the gaps in the Indian education system and how the student leaders that we have had here today with us think the Indian Parliament can address them. I hope each and every one of you gain at least some insight in this session. I know all of you are very knowledgeable in your own parts, but I hope you were able to take some thoughts out of this session, and you would take that into consideration as you continue your decision-making processes as future leaders of our nation. And I thank each and every one of you for taking out the time to join us here today at Sarkari School. And I hope this platform helped everyone get a little more insight into the student minds of our country. Now, before we end the session, I would request everybody who's still left on the call to just open their camera so we can just take a group picture of everybody. Yeah.